The day I finally met Baldwin. The 1960s opened propitiously for me and for my country, Nigeria. In 1960, Nigeria freed itself at last from British colonial rule. I published my second novel and proved to myself that the first one was not a flash in the pan. The fact that a senior executive from the Rockefeller Foundation in New York knocked at my door in Lagos with the offer of a travel grant, I think, proves the point. Where would I like to go? I said, East and Central Africa, and it was done. 2 years later, UNESCO came along with its grant. This time, I elected to go to the US and Brazil. In UNESCO files, the purpose of the grant was to meet writers and study literary trends. Privately, I wanted to see how the African diaspora was faring in their two largest concentrations in the New World. I was curious about America because the British colonial education I had received took pains to put America down. One of my teachers in high school was fond of reading out editorials written by Nigeria's leading nationalist, who, apparently, wrote very bad English. And my teacher linked this deficiency of the Nigerian to his American education, which was, of course, totally inferior to the British brand, and featured such subjects as dishwashing. Needless to say, American books and writers did not feature in my education, with one exception. It was called Up from Slavery by Booker T. Washington. And so, when I encountered Baldwin's books, they blew my mind. I wanted very much to meet this man with the fearlessness of Old Testament prophets and the clarity, eloquence, and intelligence of ancient African griots. Unfortunately, Baldwin was not in the US when I arrived, but in France. The organizers of my program apologized casually and went ahead to arrange for me to meet those who were around. I went to Rutgers University and met Ralph Ellison in his poky little office. He was okay, but I had a sense that it was not a happy meeting. He seemed so anxious to establish that Europe contributed a good deal to his identity that Beethoven was as much a part of it as jazz. Why was he telling me? Everybody knows that. Or did I look somehow like a kidnapper on the prowl? My chance to meet Baldwin finally came almost 2 decades later in 1980. My joy no doubt triggered the rather untypical flamboyance with which I greeted him. Mr. Baldwin, I presume. You should have seen his severe countenance crumble instantly into boyish happiness. The occasion was an annual conference of the 5-year-old African Literature Association, meeting that year in Gainesville, Florida. The association had invited Baldwin and me to open their conference with a conversation. Everything was going swimmingly. The tone was joyful and also serious. With typical hyperbole, Baldwin called me his buddy, a brother he had not seen in 400 years. The packed auditorium exploded in gleeful applause and nearly missed the terrible aside. It was never intended that we should meet. What he said about my novel Things Fall Apart was quite extraordinary. He read it in France, he said. It was about people and customs of which he knew nothing, but reading it, he recognized everybody. That man Okonkwo is my father. How he got over, I don't know, but he did. Halfway into our conversation, a mystery voice broke into the public address system and began to insult Mr. Baldwin. The geniality vanished. Some of the stalwarts in the audience rushed out to guard the exits. For a fraction of a second, Baldwin seemed nervous, but he quickly recovered his composure, stood erect and defiant, and began to reply to the intruder. But Mr. Baldwin will have his say. White supremacy has had its day. This reading was from a text authored by the Nigerian author Chinua Achebe about his encounter with James Baldwin. My name is Adedoyin Teriba. I teach architectural history at Dartmouth. Thank you.